Welcome back to Dr. Mike Live on RVTV. This is part 2 of a show that we began airing live at this very moment, but you may be seeing us on tape, but it's second part. And the title of the show is The Call to Human Greatness?
The future is calling us to greatness.
To greatness, okay. Well, after that first segment, I kind of ended up feeling a little shook up. So maybe if you could recap a little bit of what we went through there and then lead us into where that calling lies, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Be happy to. I just want to acknowledge that it is the third rail of all third rail conversations. This is the toughest conversation on the planet, and perhaps the toughest conversation that humanity's ever had to deal with. And that is abrupt climate change, and right with that in parallel is the collapse of systems, collapse of the environmental systems and collapse of the human systems, including, of course, the economic system. Right. And I am certainly no expert to be able to tell you exactly when these things are going to happen. What you and I talked about in the last show, in addition to kind of a recap of what had me work and be here in the Rogue Valley, go away for a while and come back, but what I came back to was this type of conversation. I was invited to be involved with video production and training design about abrupt climate change. And the abrupt part is what made it unique. That is that all the stuff of the climate change conversation that's fairly ubiquitous these days is actually coming more intensely and more rapidly than our usual sources of information let on. And this book that I'm writing and will be out roughly fall of 2015 is called The Calling: Standing Together for a New Human Operating System. And what I believe was shaking you up was just as much shaking me up, even though I've seen the clip that we watched in the last show a number of times. It was from the newsroom from HBO, and it was a representative from the EPA being interviewed by the anchor of this newsroom. And he was basically saying the same kind of information that I was shaken by last fall when I got back to the Rogue Valley. And that is that things are really already happening. And they've got a momentum of their own, and there are quite a few assessments of the data that are parallel to what that EPA person was saying, which is basically it's coming and there's nothing we can do to stop it. What you and I were both inviting the viewers to do is what I'm calling an informed inquiry. It's certainly what I had to do when I was confronted with the information. And in this book and in the show today, your website is also going to have a series of references, books, movies, documentaries, websites, and different organizations that people can dive into their own personal inquiry, informed inquiry. Find the data that answers their questions about what's going on in the world. And I've made it as easy as I can. So I'm hoping that will be of value to folks.
Right, yeah.
And so there's one piece that I hinted at last show. I really want to emphasize it here, that what scares me about our world today is, as much as this data does, is this extraordinary force of denial that's somewhat global, but mostly in the United States. By far more in the United States than anywhere else by proportion. And the whole driving force of it is to maintain this system so that those that are extracting and getting that wealth and really are in control stay there, stay in that position. It's an extraordinarily cynical position if you think about it. And it breaks my heart.
Right.
And the way that I really had this introduced to me was there are some remarkable video clips, and again, this will be on the list that you'll post, the names of the YouTube clips, and people will be able to go and watch these. We have one that I'd like to show,
Okay.
that Dr. Natalia Shakova, part of a research team out of the University of Alaska, and her team's work is up in the Arctic Circle, and her work is about methane that is escaping from the Arctic tundra, both on the land and under the sea.
Right.
And that's all her team looks
The
at.
previously frozen tundra.
Yes, and still mostly frozen.
All right.
But what she's talking about is how it's releasing more and more and more, and she's concerned about that. And another piece of this particular clip is that she starts to speak about the influences that are on a pressure against her and her team to suppress their data, to distort their data. Again, cynical beyond my wildest imaginings.
So if I can draw a bit of a comparison, what we're possibly looking at here is a situation in a way not unlike what you found yourself in Guatemala. You had gone down there a few times as visitors and found it very attractive. But when the actual idea was to live in that place, your partner was unable to integrate that into her sense of, it didn't fit with who she was and how she was and how she did it. So the nice thing was that there was the option to move back to the familiar.
Right.
But what we're looking at here is there, for what's coming in that analogy, there may not be a familiar for us to move back to.
There will be migrations, as was mentioned in that last show that we were talking about. Undoubtedly, it's already happening. But you're right. Ultimately, we're talking about a global situation.
Right.
So as time goes on, different amounts of our habitat on Earth will squeeze down in terms of what's livable. It will go, in our case here in the United States, we will see a further north migration of habitability, of where we can grow food.
Right.
So Canada may well become our breadbasket.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
let's watch the clip from Dr. Shakova and just get a sense of her and her team's reality.
Yes. Please. Crew.
The changes
Clip.
in the region
There she
that
is.
you're witnessing are of major significance, and a lot of people are very interested. How do you communicate that significance to the authorities? And I mean, do you see that there's a response, maybe scientific or government or some sort of meaningful response? And is it to a level that you're happy with, or that you would?
It's a very interesting and very important question. And as I said before, we've been working very hard during the 10 years trying to accumulate a very impressive data set. And we've been trying to deliver the message to all the communities, to the scientific community, to politicians, to public. And I don't think that we succeeded much in this delivery, not because maybe partially it's our fault that we haven't done something important, but up to my understanding, I think that science as well as politics are made by mainstreams, and we do not belong to mainstream. I mean the science which lays the basis for the decision makers. This is what I mean.
Okay.
I mean those groups and agencies and institutions and lobbies and so on and so on. I do not know how much this will take additionally for for the mainstream to accommodate this topic, because I understand clearly that, and not only me, all the people working with us, they understand that we are probably interfering with someone's interest. We're probably going against someone's interests. I don't know, but I clearly see, and we feel it day by day, that we are going against something very strong and very powerful, which might hurt our investigation, and our investigation might be put in jeopardy at all. This is what I think about it. We're doing our best, trying to deliver, trying to communicate our findings, and we're targeting, as I said, different communities. But I'm not sure that we will be allowed to do so. Yes, we are doing our best. We're communicating with people. We make people involved. We're working with at least 10 or 12 different universities, institutions all over the world. We are working hard. We are accumulating the data that might speak for themselves. This is what we are doing. This is our major point. We do have observational data, which most of those people, very opinionated, very strict and very direct sometimes, assessing our achievements. They do not have it. They've never walked in this region. They know nothing sometimes. They're talking about things they know nothing about very often. But unfortunately, this affects our work and this affects our situation.
Wow. We need to turn that down to feedback. There we go.
Okay.
Good idea. And her accent was a little strong, but I believe I heard the term shutting down the research. Why would they shut it down? What is...
Well, you know, again, when I keep using the word cynical, what I'm saying is that the moneyed interests and the controlling interests around the planet, starting with oil companies and insurance companies and so on around the world, the powers that be that have the control, that gain the benefits, the financial and otherwise, the benefits of the system as it is, have an extremely high interest in keeping things just the way they are. And to have this kind of information coming out will shut down, for instance, the use of fossil fuels. So we're seeing a huge power play going on right now that is really life is at stake on the planet.
So, let's see, I had a thought here.
Can I just say a little bit more about that? So that Dr. Shakova that we just heard, she spoke about her team and her results and the pressure that's on them to either distort or suppress their the information they're coming up with. There's also a tremendous amount of pressure at the highest level of scientific expression on the planet, which at this time is the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, Intergovernmental, Panel on Climate Change. And they are a UN organization of volunteer scientists who commit themselves for a year or two to conglomerate the report that is often put out on an annual basis. There's a summary report that is put out every year, or every time that they do report every year or two. And that summary report is what we end up seeing when the press talks about the IPCC report this year. It says da-da-da. That IPCC report is edited line by government and corporate representation before it is put out, line by line. So to me, that's one of the most cynical, extraordinary examples of tight-fisted control at an existential level.
The thought I had was, what we're talking about here is, you know, sometimes you see on the Discovery Channel or something, the 15 or 10 or 7 things that could bring our civilization to an end. You know, and one of the big ones is a meteor striking.
Absolutely.
You know? And so we watch and see how close they come, and you know, and but what I'm hearing is that in some way that would be very dramatic, but the fact is that the effect of a meteor strike is really in the process of happening now without the meteor.
Well, and if I may, without being an expert, and I'm sorry, I don't know the actual figures of how likely a meteor strike is to happen, but my understanding is that the likelihood of species extinction that affects eventually human populations in a major way is above 50%. And the likelihood grows every year that goes by when we don't have legislation, policies, and so on that change the way we operate.
Right.
I think I mentioned in the last show the part of what the subtitle of my book is Standing Together for a New Human Operating System.
Right.
And what you and I started to talk about in the last show was how no matter how you view these changes that are coming, whether they're the financial impact or the collapse of human systems or environmental systems, they all will be stress-inducing. And one thing I want to hopefully pull out of the nosedive that I may already be in with your viewers, it is not my intention to be a fear monger.
Okay.
That's the last thing that I have in mind, and certainly the last thing I included in my own inquiry to this topic and how I orient myself now. The whole orientation that I'm in, and I believe it's the center of your work as well, is how can we as human beings prepare ourselves in the best way we can for day-to-day living, or if I lose a spouse, or if I lose my job, or if we move, or any of the usual stressors that are plenty. That's plenty in just regular life.
Yeah.
And then when you and I start to talk about what is likely to be happening, not an asteroid from the sky, but stuff we're doing to ourselves within yours and my lifetime, and we're a couple of older guys.
Yeah.
It's not long that we will start to see ridiculously stressful changes in our habitat, changes in our systems. And so the nature of this book that I'm writing and the trainings that I'm producing, all these pieces are meant to be the best offering I can give from my experience. And I know you're doing the same thing in your work and counseling with people. What can we offer in the face of this extraordinary tsunami of stressors coming?
Perfect storm of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, the shift, this operating system, I'm sorry to use that kind of techie language, it's just something, I don't know.
We need new words, so go ahead.
Okay. The old operating system got us here, and it's a two-sided coin. The miracle that we're here, the video, the computers, the gorgeous life that we've got, this incredible quality of life.
Right.
And ironically, it is that same quality of life, and how we've gotten it, how we've attained it, has actually now becomes our curse.
Right.
So if we were to be in a different way, as if you and I, as an example of folks taking on this kind of new realization, okay, we've got these dire circumstances coming. Who will we be together as we face these new circumstances? That's what I'm calling the calling when I'm naming my book The Calling.
Right.
And standing together for a new human operating system.
Right.
And what I believe that will be founded in is presence. And you remember the show that I used to produce here?
Oh, yes.
That,
excellent show. Worth seeing at archive.org, folks.
Thank you for the plug. You know, how up till now, it's been the ends justify the means.
Right.
And man, we've done that time and again, generation after generation. We've produced miracles.
Right.
But now it's different. We can't build our way out. We can't geo-engineer our way out. We can't war our way out of this. That to me it looks
As a matter
like...
of fact, that just makes it worse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Each of those things.
Right.
That really what I believe the calling is to our presence with each other, is to a reconnection. You know, there's a remarkable woman been in the business of human potential for decades, Joanna Macy, and she names her work the work that reconnects. And I believe essentially this could be called the same thing.
Right.
And my assertion is that what's gotten us here is we've disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from each other, and disconnected from the earth. That creates a pretty big blind spot.
Right.
A blind spot big enough that we are destroying our own habitat.
Yeah.
So our work in a new operating system would be to reconnect with ourself in a significant way, reconnect with each other in a significant way,
Right.
and reconnect with the earth.
Right.
I know I can say those words glibly and easily. It's no simple task because it really implies first dismantling this system that we, certainly I love it dearly. You know,
Right.
I love my toys and
Yeah.
the lifestyle,
Yeah.
and we're going to have to dismantle a
Yeah.
tremendous amount of it.
Yeah. Hopi prophecy comes to my mind, you know, which also speaks of coming back, which is part of what their purpose in hanging around is to be helpful in that process. Also, what comes to my mind is that it is written that the meek shall inherit the earth. What isn't written is what shape the earth is going to be when that happens.
Right.
And that is where we are now, is looking at, are we leaving Eden, relatively speaking, again, as we speak.
Yeah.
And so, turning this around, and we're talking about issues of scale, of moving this from something, because what do they say is the thing that could unify the earth? What is the one thing, the one bit of news that if it came to pass and came out was, wow, believed, what would pull everybody together?
Yeah. It's certainly way above my pay grade spiritually to be able to answer that question, but I could take a swing at it.
Okay.
You know, if I just continue that track that I just laid out for you about the reconnection
Yeah.
with self, with other, and
Yeah.
with earth, really that's just a long-winded way of saying love. And it really does come down to that we've disconnected ourselves from virtually every dimension of the expression of love.
Right.
And I can't think of a better way metaphorically to say it than you just did about taking ourselves out of Eden. That is obviously what's happened, to a ridiculous degree.
Yeah.
And so our calling, for those of us who are willing to stand and take it on, it's going to take more courage than anything I can imagine. To dismantle what we are so deeply familiar with and want to keep going.
Right.
And then to build something new together,
Yeah.
involving that level of connection with self,
Yeah.
others, and the earth. That is the calling. There's plenty of evidence to say that it's not looking good. But I keep running into my own optimism time and again. I've been a kind of a naive person my whole life in a lovely way for myself.
Yeah.
It helps keep me moving,
Right.
going in the face of troubles. And I believe that most of us are built in a similar way.
Right. We known each other for a while, but for the most part, it's sort of passing in the halls here at RVTV, the hall. But we had a chance to sit down yesterday, and I really didn't go deeply into what you were going to say because I wanted this to be new for me too today. But we did have that experience together of finding a sense of what I call resonance. between us in terms of being able to feel that we were comprehending together a situation that is very much in the present now and needs our full awareness, mindfulness, and you're right. The biggest risk, the biggest danger, is, as has been said, fear itself. That is the thing that has to be addressed. Obviously, we are not finished. However, our time is running low. Time for maybe a quick comment. The answer to the question that I have is, if suddenly it came over that we were under attack by an alien force invading. And maybe just in the sense of the doctor in the Antarctic finding the system working, maybe the answer is that, whether it's figuratively or euphemistically or actually, hey, they landed a long time ago. And the problem is now not letting what we have get destroyed by that process. Anything more you'd like to say to sum up?
I just thank you so much for having me on. This is an extraordinarily difficult conversation. I appreciate your viewers really opening themselves up to this rough material. I hope it has not been fear-inducing. I don't know how it couldn't be, because I certainly feel waves myself, but I really invite them to do that internal inquiry that I'm suggesting. Look to your website, look to the references that we'll list there. Great place to start. The last thing I want to do is have someone kind of frozen or impacted in a bad way by this conversation. What I'm hoping is that they'll reach out, sink their teeth into some of those references and see what is going on, and come up with their own conclusions, and hopefully find a way to bring themselves into more connection with themselves, other people, and the earth.
Thank you. Thank you for being on. And thank you for watching. This has been a difficult and challenging set of shows. And the website is Michael J. Rhoades, RHOADES.com. And I will have this up as soon as possible. It is in the stages of developing. Thank you to the crew and to everybody, and to RVTV, and be well. We will be back.